hands-on with the Thunder 3 Duo Pro and the Thunder 3 Quad. I'm going to use both of these drive enclosures with the new MacBook Pro via Thunderbolt 3 to have some really fast transfer speeds. Let's check it out. What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? This is Jeff Benjamin with 9to5Mac. I have in hand the Akitio Thunder3 Duo Pro. This is a dual drive enclosure. It is RAID enabled, and I want to send a special shout out to the folks over at SanDisk for helping us with this overview and this hands-on, because they sent us 4 solid-state drives, the Ultra 2 SSDs, which are 960 gigabytes a pop. So although both of these enclosures can accommodate 3.5-inch traditional spinning disk, I opted to go with the SSD because that's going to give us the maximum speed that we can acquire with this setup. So I'm going to use 2 SSDs with the Akitio Thunder3 Duo Pro, and then I'm going to use all 4 SSDs with the Thunder 3 Quad after this. So stay tuned for that. We're going to do both of these drives here in one video. So I'm unboxing here. You see all the accessories. It comes with everything you need to get started outside of the drives themselves. This is the diskless version. I think Akitio does sell a version that comes bundled with drives, but this is the diskless version, so you'll need to provide your own disk. So on the rear of the all aluminum enclosure here, you'll see several different input options. You have the dual Thunderbolt for daisy chaining, you have DisplayPort, of course there's power. You also have a USB-B connector, you have a fan switch, and then you have these 2 hand-turn screws along with the fan on the back. Now on the front, fairly simple. You have that perforated design, you have a couple of LED indicators for your drives, along with the Akitio logo, which actually turns blue once you plug in that Thunderbolt connection and connect to your MacBook Pro. So it lets you know that it's on. There's no power button with this drive enclosure, but it powers on automatically once it acquires that Thunderbolt 3 connection. Now to reveal the internal enclosure, you just use the hand-turn screws on the back of the device and pop it out like this. And you can see the bays, they're large enough to accommodate a 3.5-inch drive, but we're going to use 2 SSDs, 2.5-inch SSDs here, and you just slide it right into the SATA connector like that, and then you use the hand-turn screw on the right side like that, and just screw it into the thread on the side of the SSD, and it's installed. It's super simple, couldn't be easier. I really like this setup. You don't have to use any tools, it's completely toolless. And that's one of the things I really like about the Duo Pro enclosure, because connecting these 2 drives is basically effortless. Couldn't be easier. So we're going to do the same thing with this SSD here. Plug it in, screw it in, and we're good to go. Okay, so now we're just going to slide this setup back into the aluminum enclosure, and this is all aluminum. It's solid, it's heavy, feels quality. You have those chamfered edges on the front, so it's well designed. It's not overly big, but it is fairly large, so you got to kind of consider that. Obviously, it's large enough to accommodate 2 3.5-inch drives. Here's the big thing though, you have a hardware RAID controller right here on the rear, so you can use a little screwdriver to turn to the desired disk configuration, and this is hardware, so it is OS independent. And that means you don't have to do any software configuration later. There's also a switch to toggle the fan on or off. The fan isn't very loud to begin with, but it's a nice option to have. You also have a DisplayPort connector, which can allow you to connect to an external display, 4K at 60 Hertz. And let's see, there's a USB port, which allows you to connect if you don't have a Thunderbolt 3 connection. Obviously, it's not going to be as fast, but that is an option. So once you plug in your Thunderbolt 3 cable, you'll see the little blue power button come on, indicating that the device is connected, ready to go. Again, there's no power button, but once you have it plugged into the wall outlet and you have your Thunderbolt 3 cable plugged in, it just fires up by itself. And now here is disk utility. We're going to go ahead and format the drive. Again, it's already configured for RAID 0 because it has a hardware controller in there, so you don't have to go into RAID Assistant or any of that. It works right out of the box, which is really nice. So I've just formatted the drive here, and we're going to run some speed tests. How about that? So select the target drive with the Blackmagic disk utility here and start it. And decent speeds here, 650 megabytes per second. Obviously, this test is geared towards video editors and things of that nature. So this is really geared towards transferring large chunks of data, and that is what this drive excels at. So as you can see, very fast, right? 700 plus read, 600 plus write, decent speeds. definitely going to be more than fast enough to accommodate 4K video. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about the Akitio Thunder3 quad. So this is a quad enclosure, can accommodate 4 SSDs or 4 spinning disk, 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch variety here. It comes in this bag, which is kind of interesting. It kind of clues you in as to how big this thing is. It's approximately double the size of the Duo Pro that we just showed you here. Much larger. You have the dual Thunderbolt 3 ports. You have a Molex 6-pin connector for the power adapter. Fairly big power brick that comes with this. You have DisplayPort. There's also a physical power button on the back as well. Obviously, one of the big standout features from a design perspective is that big handle at the top. You don't get the chamfered edges like you did on the Duo Pro. You basically just have a solid edge that's shiny and polished. And there's a little lever on the bottom of the unit that allows the front unit to sort of slide out a little bit, where you can pop off that front cover. And then from there, you can unscrew each of the drive bays here and add a drive to the bay. Now, installing these drives requires you to screw in 4 screws with a screwdriver. So it's not the toolless setup that we had with the Duo Pro. It takes a little more effort to get these drives installed on the quad. So make sure you have your screwdriver available. You do have the hand turn screws to remove the bays, but you're going to need to screw down those drives with the included screws that come in the box. So I have 3 drives installed. This is the 4th drive that I'm installing in the quad. All right, so all 4 drives installed. Going to pop the front cover back on. Just press it like that, and then use the little release lever on the bottom of the unit to let it slide back into place like that. Now you can definitely see where this handle would come in handy, especially if you have full-size 3.5 inch spinning hard drives. This thing can get quite heavy, so having that handle is nice. All right, so let's plug it in, and you see it fired up immediately as soon as I connected that Thunderbolt 3 cable. It was ready to go. Now, again, sort of the downside is that you will have to go into the RAID Assistant in Disk Utility. So just open up Disk Utility, go to File, RAID Assistant, and then you can check all of the drives, click Next, and then give your drive a name, and then just click Next to proceed through each step. Now, the negative side of this is that this is OS dependent. So it's not independent based on the hardware, but you actually have to set up your RAID configuration via macOS's disk utility. So that is sort of a downside, I guess you could say, with this particular quad setup. Whereas the Duo Pro had RAID built into the hardware itself, which is nice because it's OS independent. But that said, you're still going to have a lot of benefits by running RAID 0 with 4 drives, 4 SSDs no less, in the quad. It's going to be fairly fast, fairly brisk transfer speeds, as you're going to see here in just a second. Now, if I had to choose between these 2 devices, I would probably go with the Duo Pro. The Duo Pro is smaller, it's better designed, it's easier to install the drives because it's toolless. It has that fan control switch, it has USB if you don't have Thunderbolt 3, obviously has that built-in hardware RAID controller. There's a lot of advantages with the Duo Pro. However, it's not going to be able to match the speed of the quad. As you see here with those 4 SSDs, you're going to get over 1,000 megabytes, both read and write. So I suppose the real takeaway from this test is that both devices have their strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, the Duo Pro is going to be slower than the quad with 4 SSDs, but the quad is also much larger, much louder. You can't disable the fans. It doesn't have the hardware RAID, and it doesn't have USB. So you'll need to take all of that into consideration when looking at the Thunder 3 Duo Pro or the quad. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. This is Jeff with 9to5Mac.